My baptismal name is Alice, and now I am Sister John Vianney, a Notre Dame sister. But in the privacy of my own heart, I sometimes still call myself by the nickname my father once gave me. We had been studying about germs in school. That evening when I started to brush my teeth, I was struck by the thought of the field day that germs must be having on my toothbrush. I would sterilize it, and I might as well protect the rest of the family while I was at it. So I took all 9 toothbrushes, from Papa's green one down the line to Ruthie's tiny pink one, and dumped them into a pan of water. 20 minutes in boiling water should kill all germs. Well, after my 20 minutes were up, I stood stunned and staring at the pot on the stove. There, bubbling merrily on top, were the bristles, and at the bottom, 9 colored handles had melted to fit the shape of the pan. Just then my father walked in and came over to see what had captured my horrified gaze. He gave one startled look, and I heard my nickname for the first time as he groaned, Alice in Blunderland. So if after listening to me, you also feel tempted to call me Alice in Blunderland, go right ahead, I won't mind. Are you wondering about the title of this record? No one dreamt that the random thoughts which I wrote in the middle of the night would ever be put on a record. So I asked our Lord to help me find a title for these little odds and ends. I opened the scriptures. There in the book of Proverbs, as if underlined in red, was my title, Dry Crusts with Peace. A poor man has only crust to share, so in my poverty and with love, I share with you my crusts, begging God to dip them in his peace. Dry crusts. A baby teethes on them, birds find them a treat, the poor hoard them. They are satisfying when one is truly hungry. No wonder Christ has said, gather up the fragments, the crusts, lest they be lost. May God transform these thoughts into manna for your souls, manna rich in his comfort and strength. Pain, loneliness, and heartaches are evils in themselves. They will always be mysterious and without human answers, even when accepted in faith. God himself has said that his ways aren't ours, nor his thoughts like ours, and that the wisdom of man is foolishness with him. Scripture is full of this upside-downness of God's ways. He that would be the greatest, let him be the least. He that is the master should be the servant of all. He that would keep his life for life eternal should lose it. Unless the grain of wheat die, it remains alone. If it dies, it brings forth much fruit. When I am weakest, then am I strongest. The last shall be first, and the first last. The weak and little ones has God chosen to confuse the strong and wise. When the Son of Man shall be lifted up in the supreme seeming failure of the cross, then shall he draw all things to himself. So it is that the evil of pain, moral, physical, or mental, has been changed by God into something strangely powerful, just by his permitting it and enduring it himself. Since he is all love, he is always able to draw something great and good and lovely from evil. So we believe in God's upside-down way of doing things, that Christ once again can pass through the solid walls of our sick rooms and reach out to save souls all over the world, if only we let him. Our lives are lives of faith in this Father's love for us. God says, I have loved you with an everlasting love. But this faith is most of the time stark, naked faith, where trust is our only refuge. In sickness, there isn't much room to hide from ourselves or God. We have only a bedsheet between us and God's nearness is often a blinding darkness. When I was a young novice, I was troubled. If I could really believe that my pain could ease Christ's pain, that he could use my body and heart to save souls, I felt I could endure anything for and with him. But how could that be, since he is now glorified? I asked a priest. He said that if I'd picture to myself something like the face of a clock with God in the center, and the centuries around the rim of the circle where the numbers would be, I'd get some idea of this mystery of God. Say, for example, that Jesus lived in the year 33 on number 9, and I, in 1969, lived on number 4. Around the outside, between the numbers, there would be different spacings, but each number would be the same distance from God as the center. So with God, all events are equally present. It is just for men that there is time. Time is a creature that man needs to live in, like he needs air to breathe. God simply is. So what I do and suffer now can comfort Christ. My sufferings are his, and his are mine. Christ has a body that can't suffer now, so we give him ourselves to continue his life on earth. He has only our lips to smile with, to speak words of compassion and love, only our bodies to suffer in, our hearts to bleed in anguish and loneliness, our souls to sing in joy and praise. So does Christ continue in each of us his work of saving souls. We must let him use our bodies and hearts as one uses a pencil to write with. This we must believe, that by our consent we allow him to renew his passion in us. Christ's passion was the highest expression of his love for us. A priest asked if I would share with you little things that have helped me, so I shall just tell things as they come to mind. Please excuse me if it doesn't seem to hang together. God uses each of us as channels for grace. We are like faucets. May we always have our plumbing free of clogging self-pity and lack of trust. I know how hard it is at times to say yes to God, and so does he. In his compassion he has said, "The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." God calls himself a jealous God. As a lover, he must have first place in our hearts. So as with Abraham and his beloved son Isaac, God tests our love. At times he asks for the surrender of our symbolic little Isaacs. Years ago, during an instruction on the vow of poverty, Mother Fidelis asked how many of us had watches. I had just received my very first watch as a gift from my loved ones. All Mother Fidelis said to us was, "Sisters, I as Mother Commissary have many more appointments to keep and trains to catch, but I have never worn a watch." I wanted Jesus to have me totally when I pronounced my final vows, not by the slightest attachment or the least clinging of my heart to anything other than him would I want. Now my young heart was torn. If Mother could do without a watch, so could I. But what would my dear ones think if I gave up the watch? I knew of the sacrifices my brothers and sisters had made to give me my gift, and I couldn't hurt them by my ingratitude. Then, no, he that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. But I really needed a watch as a music teacher and organist. Well, finally my struggle ended. I would sacrifice my watch and beg God to bless our family. They would understand my love for God and them. I went to Reverend Mother, knelt down, handed her the watch, and asked to give it up. She took it and thanked me and blessed me. As I turned to leave, she called me back. "And where did you get your watch?" I told her. Then she smiled, handed me the watch, and said, "And now I give it back to you to wear in obedience. You have both the merit of having given it up and a blessing of obedience in using it." After one of the operations, I couldn't eat well. Not much would stay down. The doctor had given me some calcium pills that tasted like bones. They were about the size and thickness of 2 nickels and had to be chewed. I told our Lord that they reminded me of peppermint candy, you know, the round kind with the X's on, and that I wished I had some instead of those big pills. The next moment our sister nurse, Sister Margaret, walked in with a little dish of peppermint candy, the kind with the X's on. She said, "I suppose these won't stay down either, but at least they'll put a different taste in your mouth." After she left, my heart was moved to tears. Jesus let me understand that He knows the tiniest desires of our hearts, that He would and could give us anything we want, even the kind of candy we desire. So deeply does He know and love us. But the big things we must trust to Him, for He is God and He is love. So we must believe in Him, no matter what the suffering or darkness of soul, as it says in Scripture, "Trust Him thou must, if find Him thou wouldst." For 2 years I was in a room which had frosted glass windows. I couldn't see the stars that I love, or snowflakes, or the flight of a bird. So I would comfort myself and tell Jesus that someday I would see His beautiful eyes shining with love for me, and that love light would make up for all the times I couldn't see the stars. I would see His beautiful white body, more lovely than the purest snow, and I would someday fly into His arms swifter than the flight of any bird. The smallest things can bring God and the soul closer in love. Once I saw a bucket of dirty soapy water, and that's just what it looked like, plain dirty soapy water. But in an instant a ray of sunshine touched it, and it became a thing of fairy beauty, brilliant and radiant, reflecting all the colors of the rainbow. So it is when love touches our poor, drab, dirty little souls. God's love makes our lives radiant in His eyes. People come for comfort to those who suffer and confide in them more easily, it seems, than in others. Maybe it's because we can't run away. No, it's because they sense the compassion of Christ in us. For the sick themselves must lean heavily on the compassionate Christ. A priest once asked if I would visit with a young woman who was in moral trouble. She was withdrawing into herself because she felt that no one could love her on account of her many sins. I said to Father, "But Father, what can I do that a priest can't do?" He said, "You are a woman, you have suffered and know how to show compassion." And so, offering my heart and lips to God, I went to her. God strengthened her and helped her to again believe in love. Our simplest words can have great power if they spring from an unselfish, loving heart. Last year, I was taken to the hospital to have my body cast changed. I lay on the stretcher waiting. Just opposite me sat a young man who had evidently been hurt at work. He had a bloody hanky around his finger. His face was streaked with sweat and dirt, and he looked like a scared little boy who was trying to be brave. My heart went out to him, and I told him that I hoped his finger would be all right and that I would pray for him. A week later, I had a visitor. It was the same young man. He had inquired who and where I was and had come 40 miles. He told me that he was so struck that I, who had my whole body in a cast, would care about his finger and pray for him, that he couldn't get me from his mind. He is a friend now and laying up treasure in heaven by his kindness. That is another lovely thing that comes out of sickness. It gives others a chance to be kind to Jesus in us. Christ has told us, "Whatever you do to the least, you do to me." If there were no sick, no weak, no old, no lonely people, would there be such a thing as compassionate love? When I was a child, I wore steel braces, and when my father carried me, my long legs banged against him. Once when he took us swimming, one of the children noticed that his legs had black and blue marks. He asked, "Papa, how come?" Papa said, "Oh, you know how it is. You bump yourself without noticing it." I knew that I had caused the marks, and my father must have noticed that I knew, because he lifted me up and carried me to a lilac bush to pick some flowers for Mama. As he held me, he whispered, "Don't worry, Alice. Those are love marks, and I wouldn't be without them for anything in the world." So I think does Jesus say to each of us when we look at his wounded hands and feet and side, Those are love marks, and I wouldn't be without them for anything in the world. When I taught music at St. Boniface, I had to answer doorbells. The refectory was in the basement, the community room on the first floor, the chapel on the second floor, and the younger you were, the higher up you slept. So it was stairs, up and down and up, during meals, during prayers, during lessons, doorbells and telephones rang. I limped then, as I did all my life, and sometimes I'd have to sit on the stairs, unable to go up or down till my leg could go again. I found this a real suffering, so I thought, why waste these chances to draw near to Jesus? I told him that I would find him and give him a smile, no matter how he hid himself. In the heart of a little toothless child, an old man, a tramp, a salesman, I would use these doorbells to love him in whomever was on the other side of the door. When God was on earth, he hid himself under the form of a gardener, a ghost, a criminal, a baby, a piece of bread. And so the pain of answering bells was turned into joy. How strangely God has answered the deepest desires of my heart. Even as a little girl, I longed to give my life in martyrdom to God. I figured that as I had only one life, I would want to give it as a total love offering to him. Martyrdom is the willing giving of a life to God in faith. I thought the gift of martyrdom was not to be mine, but Jesus has made me understand that sometimes it is easier to die for him than live for him, and that a slow dying day by day also holds the grace of martyrdom. Once a sister said to me, "It doesn't seem possible you could have suffered so all these years. Your face doesn't show it." Maybe she was right. Then I thought, no one could ever make me doubt that I have suffered, and suffered terribly in soul and body. But if each morning for 21 years I said yes to God for whatever he wants, even though I failed during the day and sometimes miserably, wouldn't that surrender, after years of it, stamp my face with something that might be interpreted as not having suffered? Jesus in his love comforted me, letting me know that he is aware of each day offered in love. That week we had a substitute priest as confessor. I had never seen him before. After my confession he said, "Sister, may I ask you a question?" I said, "Surely, Father." He asked, "Have you suffered, would you say much, over a long period, say even from childhood?" I answered, "Yes, Father." Then he said, "See, I knew I could trust my judgment. I was in this room less than 5 minutes and I said to myself, now this is a soul that has suffered with resignation for years." I was troubled and asked him how he, a complete stranger, could come to that conclusion. I told him what that sister had said about my face not showing it. He said, "Sister, I've been a hospital chaplain for years. A soul who has suffered for years with resignation, and especially from childhood, has a certain something about the face. Once recognized, that quality cannot be mistaken. It has nothing to do with lines or wrinkles or expression. The closest I can come to describing it is to say that there is a certain luminosity, a radiance that is there, and your face is unmistakably marked with this quality." His remark reminded me of when I was a little girl. We were 5 girls, and my sisters were petite and pretty, whereas I limped and had big bones. I said to my mother, "Mama, how come I'm not pretty like the others?" She beckoned me to her side and told me to look in the mirror with her. "Well, let's look at you," she said. "No, you'll never be called pretty, but you have a strong face and a kind face, and if you're good, someday you will be beautiful." Besides, Christ has said that when we fast, we should wash our faces so men won't notice our penance. Anyway, love prompts us to be kind by making others suffer as little as possible from our pain. A child can understand this. I remember when we'd go for a walk, I'd lag behind, pretending to tie my shoestring, or run ahead and then sit down and pick dandelions, so that my mother wouldn't see me limp. I knew that she suffered when I did, and so in my love, I tried to spare her. Most of the time, we have only small offerings to give to God. For instance, eating from a tray can be a real penance. We do so love our own freedom. I'm prejudiced against eggs. As a little girl, I used to watch fascinated whenever my mother would crack an egg on the side of a frying pan. I expected someday to see a part of a fluffy chicken come out, because how did they know when to take the egg away from the hen before the chicken started to form? Besides, we kept about 6 chickens during the summer months and then had them as part of our Thanksgiving feast. But by this time they had become our pets, and how can one enjoy eating a pet? The crowning blow against eggs for me, though, came on my reception morning. At breakfast, I ate as much as I could of a spoiled egg. I thought God was testing me to see how generous I would be with Him during my novitiate. So our bed can be an altar where we offer these little sacrifices made great by being united to Christ's sacrifice. Paul Claudel says, "The male is a priest, but it is not forbidden to a woman to be a victim." May I tell you of one of the tender things Jesus has done for me? As SSNDs, we don't wear a ring as many religious orders of women do. I used to long for the symbol of love between Jesus and me. Now our Lord has shown me how the lack of a ring can be a sign of even greater love. Do you know how? Before any operation, a person must take off any medals or rings. Jesus let me understand that I could make the absence of a ring a symbol of love, of my readiness to suffer anything for Him. Now I think if we had a ring, I would take it off at night as an act of love, to show Jesus that my heart is ready, O Lord, my heart is ready. What do I think of death? Death is the door we pass through to see God face to face. I like to picture the moment of death this way. Our Blessed Mother comes into the room holding the Christ child in her arms. His little divine face is covered with a blanket. Our Lady bends over me and says, "Would you like to see His face?" And the moment of death is when she lifts back the blanket, and I see for the first time my God and my love face to face. Christ loved birds. He has said, "Consider the birds of the air." As children, we would bring home fledglings or hurt birds to my mother. Our kitchen was home for many a feathered boarder. What reverence for life my mother unconsciously taught us. Besides caring for my father, 7 children, cats, dogs, rabbits, and neighbor children, my mother still found time to care for a little wounded bird. Once we brought her a robin with a broken leg. She took a toothpick, wrapped cotton around it, and used that to splint his little leg. The courage and cheerfulness of that little lame robin taught me early in life that suffering and song go well together. God has so delicately balanced the flight of a bird that when it loses a feather on one side, it automatically loses a corresponding feather on the other. I've seen it happen with the birds I've had in my room. I'd pick up a feather, and a few minutes later, I'd seen the mate feather fall out. For a while, I kept a pair of these feathers in my office book to remind me of trust. Christ has said, "If God so cares for the birds of the air, how much more you, O you of little faith? Aren't you more precious than many sparrows?" One canary, Goldie, taught us a lesson, that the love songs that our hearts sing to God can be just as sweet coming from an old or crippled person as the song that comes lilting from a lovely young person. Goldie was old and actually bald-headed. He really looked queer, like a little old tonsured monk. It made us smile just to see him stretch out his funny little head and then pour out his golden song of praise. Forgetful of his odd appearance, he too made us conscious only of the loveliness of his song. No wonder St. Augustine says, "And by not thinking on self, surmount self." One day, my sister Margaret heard an awful bird commotion outside. She found that a silly little sparrow had his head stuck in a small opening of a wren house. His wife and a few neighbor birds sat chattering on the fence, excitedly giving him advice on how to free himself. Margaret was afraid he'd break his neck in the struggle, so she broke open the birdhouse instead. As soon as his head was freed, he flew to his mate on the fence. Margaret said she laughed out loud at how the bird wife and her agitated love sat scolding him for being so stupid. The bird wife acted as we sometimes do when we scold a loved one, just from relief when our love has been frightened by the folly of a dear one. Our tame canary, Ricky, delighted the old sisters by perching contentedly on their wheelchairs or sitting in their laps. Sometimes I wished for a camera to catch the picture of a wrinkled, kindly face of an old nun talking to the perky canary on her finger. Both sets of eyes looked the same, bright with innocence and joy. Vicky had a friend, a parakeet named Polly. They played a game something like tag and leapfrog combined. If ever anyone says you have a bird brain, I think you should feel flattered. Birds seem smart and kind. Ricky had a little plastic bathtub. After his bath, there'd be more water out than in. Once I didn't want the room splashed up, so I put a piece of paper over Ricky's bathtub. He walked around it a few times, peering under the paper and peeping disappointedly. Then he came to the edge of the table and sang to get my attention. I kept reading, pretending I didn't notice what he wanted. Finally, Polly couldn't stand it. He flew down from the door and pulled the paper off for his friend. Happy, our blue parakeet, had an accident. Someone had scared her, and she had flown in blind fear against a large glass door. Her bill was broken, and her white breast feathers were all bloody. She twitched and couldn't keep her eyes open or stay on her perch. For 2 days and nights I held her and fed her water and brandy with an eyedropper. Each time she'd come to and start twitching, I'd knock her out with brandy. After a few days, she was able to sit unsteadily on the top of her cage. Polly, the other parakeet, stopped playing with Ricky the canary and gave us some good lessons in love. He'd sit by the hour and let Happy, the sick parakeet, lean against him. He'd straighten his feathers for him, crack seeds and force them into the other parakeet's broken beak, give him water, or just talk to him. After about a week of convalescence, Polly would push the wobbly Happy for a walk around the top of the cage. After 2 weeks, Happy was cured and lived many years to make us happy. Janie, a female parakeet we had, formed a special friendship between St. Francis and me. I had just finished illustrating a child's book about St. Francis when Janie disappeared. She had been so tame, we couldn't imagine where she'd gone. If you'd call Janie, she'd answer from wherever she happened to be perched, on the ring of a chair, the top of a curtain, or her favorite place, the top drawer next to my bed. But call as we did, this time there was no answering cheep. We searched until it got too dark to see. By the next afternoon, she still hadn't turned up. I was afraid she had gone into someone else's bedside drawer, and sooner or later we'd find a corpse. I reminded St. Francis that I had done my best to make my drawings of him attractive to little children, and wouldn't he please, as a favor, find Janie for me? It was fall and chilly outside, so my window was closed, and still I thought I heard Janie calling. I asked the nurse to put me in a wheelchair and let me outside for a little while. I followed the sound of that call almost the length of a city block to a clump of pine trees, all the while telling myself that I must be hearing things. But no, after 48 hours lost, there on a treetop was a glint of blue. I called, "Janie, Janie." She cocked her head at me. Then she started down, branch by branch, while I kept calling. How all of us rejoiced at the return of our prodigal parakeet. Did you know that a female bird without a mate lays non-fertile eggs like a hen does? I didn't until Janie taught me. She was trembling and making odd little sounds. I thought she was sick, so I held her. Season of jelly beans, the nurses thought I was fooling when I said Janie laid an egg. For proof, one of the sisters broke the little egg, and we had our proof. After that, Janie laid 4 more eggs in the second drawer of my bedside stand. I'd leave the top drawer open. She'd go into the top drawer, down the back, and into the second drawer, where she had made a nest by chewing up my retreat notes. I thought I'd save her the trouble of using her back stairway, so I closed the top drawer and opened the second. The next morning, her 4 eggs were missing from the second drawer, and I found them in the third drawer. Evidently, she liked back stairways, but I'm still trying to figure out how she carried those eggs from the second to the third drawer. In her claw, under her wing, in her beak, or did she simply have an egg-rolling contest? Have you any ideas? People have asked that I share more of my thoughts, so with joy I continue. The year I took final vows, my little sister Ruthie died. She was 13, just at the age when she was blossoming into a little young woman. She threw her arms around my mother, gasped, "Mama, I love you," and was gone. How we missed our little sister. She died on November 21st, the feast of Our Lady's Presentation. The Mass text of that day fits Ruthie so beautifully. "Hearken, O daughter, and incline your ear. Forget your father's house and come, for the king has greatly desired your beauty." The morning she died, I couldn't eat breakfast because of grief. One well-meaning but unwise sister told me I could do my sister more good by resignation, by eating and not giving way to tears. I was young and out of love for Ruthie choked back the tears. Then my heart felt like it was turned to stone, and after that I couldn't cry. Months later at breakfast, a story was read about if a shepherd wants to lead a flock of sheep up a high mountain, he takes the youngest of the flock. The mother sheep follows the bleating of her young one, and the whole flock follows. It made me think that that's what God had done to our family, taken the youngest so that the rest of us would keep our eyes on heaven. I started to cry at table and couldn't stop. My superior asked me what on earth was the matter. I explained and learned how precious are tears. Did not Christ weep? Weren't we told to weep with those who weep? A tear can be a sacramental to me now, a visible sign of an inward grace of compassion, contrition, and love. My father died rather suddenly some months ago. It is only with the passing of time that the death of a loved one takes on its full reality. Some little detail strikes the heart, bringing home to one the finality of death. It was a passing thought that I would never again feel my father's whiskers when he'd kissed me that made me cry so in loneliness for him. My father was a little man with a quiet humor and a love of life. He'd do tricks like turning somersaults when he'd play his harmonica, and we children would troop after him as if he were some jolly red-haired Pied Piper. He'd blacken his face with cork just to amuse us. Once we pleaded with him to make us into Negro minstrels too. He said, "Go ask your mother." When we did, she said, "All right, Pa, but if you make them black, you can wash them too." He did. Oddly, mosquitoes shunned my father and tormented my mother, but children swarmed all over Papa. When the grandchildren started to come into this world, my father kept himself busy making little wooden toys. My mother half-jokingly said she'd have to tag the chairs that he couldn't cut up for toys, or she and Papa'd be sitting on the floor with a chairless home before long. Sometimes he'd come home from work, grab my mother around the waist and give her a twirl, kiss her and call her Beth. We children would be tickled and giggle, thinking we were seeing the height of romance. Once when we asked to go to the dentist, Papa said, "When I was your age, we chewed tar, and look how white my teeth are." So we went out to our newly tarred alley and tried chewing tar. Our clothes got full of it. I knew my mother used butter to remove tar, so I took a half a pound of butter from the kitchen. We found a hidden corner and tried to clean ourselves up. The harder we rubbed, the worse our clothes looked. So we had to finally admit defeat and face the consequences. All my mother said was, "Pa, they have enough outlandish ideas of their own without your adding to them." Papa was a streetcar man. When it was time for him to come home from work, we'd watch for his streetcar and race it to the corner. Whoever got there first could carry his grip. The neighbors sitting on their porches used to be like cheerleaders. Once the whole block clapped, because even with my limp, I had won that day. Papa used little things to teach us deep lessons. Once he took a raw egg, put it lengthwise between his hands, and told us that no matter how hard he pressed, he couldn't crack the egg in that position. I thought he was fooling, and when he told me to try it, I gingerly put a little pressure on it. Then I kept pressing harder and harder. He was right. No force could crack that delicate eggshell. Then he told us that as long as we stayed straight and trusting in the hands of God, without twisting under the pressure of God's will, nothing on earth could crack us or make us go to pieces. My sister remarked the other day that we children grew up on bread, milk, and music. I guess that describes well the simplicity and joy of our childhood. My parents loved music and made many a sacrifice so that all 7 of us children could have music lessons. Music is linked with even my earliest memories of my mother singing the lovely folk music of the Austrian Tyrol as she rocked and fed us. My mother came from Austria when she was about 16. She didn't know English nor a single soul in America. She had only a loaf of black bread under one arm and a little bundle of clothes under the other. But in her heart, she had stored the beauty and music and poetry of the Tyrolean Alps. I remember the day we got our piano. To celebrate, we had homemade root beer. One of the children set her wet glass on the new piano and it made a ring on the varnish. I thought sure we'd get scolded. But Mama turned to Papa and said, "Well, Pa, it's a Grecki piano now, and we'll have to manage to pay for it." Speaking of music, reminds me of my boys' choir. Boys seem to think that singing is somehow sissified. I bumped into that problem when I was organizing my boys' choir. But once I explained to the boys the gift of the boy unchanged voice, I had no trouble. I would tell the boys, "You know, the most beautiful musical instrument on earth is a young boy's unchanged voice. God entrusts this precious gift to a little boy when he's about 8 to 14 years old. Then it is gone forever. Never again, after his voice changes, will he have a chance to praise God with that beautiful gift. A little boy's singing voice is called angelic because it's a musical sound free from overtones. Why God entrusts this lovely gift to a little boy is hidden in his love." One thing in our family, my mother tried to teach us to be kind in speech. Have you ever really thought of the wonder of words? God gives us our greatest clue to the mystery and power of words by his gift to us of the second person of the Blessed Trinity. And the Word was made flesh, and God's love became incarnate. My mother used to say that we should be kind and reverence each person for the secret sorrow that they bear. The old saying, "Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me," is so false. An Indian put it this way: "Arrows they let fly, pierce me inside without marking my flesh. We all know the bitter hurt caused by unkind or thoughtless words. We also know the comfort and strength of a word of love and understanding, of praise or gratitude. The spoken word is a force that will go on forever. This thought is frightening. Our Lord has said that we'd have to give an account of our every word. He knows the power of words for good or evil. God placed a burning coal on the lips of Isaiah the prophet to show that his lips were sanctified. And we do not have a burning coal, but the burning heart of Christ on our lips to sanctify our words. We must be careful of our tongue. We all know how easily we can have a slip of the tongue. Just a few days ago, one young sister told me how a well-meant word of hers set the whole community laughing. One elderly sister was having trouble walking the long distances from one part of the convent to the other. She was given a wheelchair with an electric motor to use, but she felt almost ashamed. This young sister tried to make her feel more at ease in using the chair, so she said to her, "Sister dear, use it, and don't feel embarrassed. Of any sister I know, you most of all deserve an electric chair." People have asked for a short sketch of my life, so here it is. When I was about 18 months old, surgery was performed on my congenital dislocated hip. What a time of anxiety and anguish it must have been for my young parents. Johnny had just been born. My two older sisters, Margaret and Eleanor, were still babies, being just a year apart. I was in a body cast for months and nearly died. The doctor said he wouldn't bet a nickel on my life, but God drew me back from death for his own reasons. The operation was unsuccessful. At the age of 3.5, I started school on my own. I'd give my sister Eleanor a head start, and then I'd follow her from afar off. Each morning I'd turn up like a proverbial bad penny in the kindergarten doorway, and each morning the poor sister would return me home. Finally, in desperation, the teacher said that although I was too young to be accepted officially, I could come every day as a guest. My talent for art showed up even in kindergarten. My drawings would be marked excellent, very fine, and this child has exceptional talent. All 7 of us children used to draw for fun and make drawings of toys we couldn't afford to buy. I remember the time someone told a funny story at table. Albert absent-mindedly made a quick sketch of it right on the tablecloth. My father leaned over, took the pencil, and added some more drawings that had us laughing tears. The pencil went from hand to hand until the tablecloth had a border of happy nonsense sketches. In memory, I can still see my mother lift the baby out of the high chair and put the pencil in her fat little hand so that she too could share in this family nonsense. My desire to become a sister was unwavering from 3rd grade on. Once when I was waiting for a piano lesson in the sisters' convent, I overheard the superior say to one of the sisters, "Sister, next time if you have to give your shoes to some tramp, for goodness sakes, at least give him your weekday pair and not the Sunday ones." It was then that I realized that the sisters were truly human. I loved them deeply and knew there was a chance for me to become one of them. A poem entitled "Just for a Moment" was a great grace in my life. It started me on to the practice of dropping in, just for a moment, to talk to Christ in the Eucharist. We moved when I was in 6th grade. I remember asking God for the grace of never committing a sin in our new home. Our old home had gotten too small for us, for we were now 9. We moved into a big old-fashioned house, and I loved each corner of that old home. I entered the convent when I was 14. For 2 weeks after I left home, my father wouldn't lock the door at night in case I'd get homesick. I had never slept away from home before, even for one night. Only years later he told me that on my entrance day, when he stopped his streetcar at an intersection, he saw me in an automobile right next to a streetcar. I was in a car with the sisters who were taking me to the mother house. Papa said it was a good thing that the streetcar was on rails, or it would have gone into the gutter, because his eyes were so blinded by tears. My 4 years in the aspiranture and candidature were happy ones. Though I limped and had pain, I accepted it as part of me. Just before reception, though, the question of my leg came up again. The doctor advised surgery, but admitted there was a possibility of my not walking again. Mother Madolfa told me I'd have to take the chance or be sent home. My parents wouldn't consent to the operation. What great anguish was mine after all those years of longing and waiting, and to have come so close. I pleaded with my parents to let me take the chance, even if it should turn out that I couldn't walk again. Finally, my father said, "Ma, it's her life, let her try." All the arrangements for surgery were completed, but then Mother Madolfa sent word that I should be permitted to go to the novitiate without the operation. How God worked behind the scenes that time, I'll never know. After profession in 1939, I was sent to St. Boniface as music teacher and organist. I taught for 9 years. My work with the boys' choir was my special challenge and joy. 10 of my boys are now priests. In 1948, I went to the hospital for hip surgery. The operation was unsuccessful. Since then, operation after operation has been tried, but none have worked out. My mother used to say that if God shuts a door, He always opens a window. So He has guided me into a different work for Him, to suffer and paint and carve. I will trust Him whom I love, for trust Him thou must, if find Him thou wouldst. And my deepest desire is to find Him. Your sister in Christ, Sister John Vianney. God bless you. This is a P.S. Today is September 29th, 1980. People had asked about my physical condition. I was 26, now I'm 60 years old. I can truthfully say before God that there seems to be no sound spot in my body. The original cause of all the suffering and complications stems from the fact that I was born with a congenital dislocated hip. My condition, instead of having gotten better, keeps deteriorating. Remember the game we used to play with the little daisy where you pull a pedal and say, "He loves me not"? Sometimes I picture myself like a little daisy. If God were my daisy and I'd pull His petals, I'd know that I'd always end up with "He loves me." For He says in His holy word, "Greater love than this no man has, for the man lay down his life for his friend." And so when God pulls my daisy petals, it's as if He's asking for a gift back that He gave to me to use for a while. At this point in my life, added to all the pains and complications of unsuccessful surgeries, I have now a disease called dermatomyositis. It is so rare that the specialist said that I'm only the third case that he has seen in his life. When I asked him how long I would live or what I could expect, he said, "More and more pain as you have more and more limitation." The length of my life will depend on which muscles this disease takes over and how fast it would grow. Now it has touched every part of my body, and in layman's terms, it turns the bones into something like chalk, so brittle, and it turns the muscles into stone, so that wherever you have any muscle or joint, then it becomes affected. The motion range is limited. More and more pain is caused by the fact that it kills only surface nerves. It puts layer upon layer of built-up hardened muscle, And that pressure kills surface nerves but puts pressure on the deep nerves. People who have only one pinched nerve, say for instance in the spine, have to have surgery because the amount of pain that's involved. And what I have are involved are the two big sciatic nerves with all their branches. The doctor said that those are the nerve branches that carry most of the pain in the body. I can no longer get out of bed or sit up. I used to crawl around the bed, but not anymore. I can't turn over by myself. I can't sleep on either side because both sockets are disintegrated. The doctor said if you live long enough, you'll end up in a fetal position, and that's how my body seems to be taking on that appearance. The head will not bend back. The arm muscles and wrist muscles are turned inward. The right hand is paralyzed. The arms feel like they're taped to the body. The abdomen and the abdominal muscles are hardening and pulling into a distended abdomen. If my knees could bend, they would pull upward, but since the one is twisted, it adds more complications. The fetal position is with the baby has that rounded head bent down, little hands curled over and close to the body, legs pulled up, so it's a compact little human being that is in the womb. I take might seem to you a strange comfort in our Lord's words when he says, unless a man is born again of water and the Holy Spirit, he shall not have life in him. And so I beg God to take this physical appearance of being able to be born again and help me always see my condition in the light of faith. I ask that you remember me in prayer, for I am convinced that it is only by the power of God and the love and care of those who love me and pray for me that make it possible for me to live in this condition. God asks for only one thing of me, that I as a human being with a choice to give him this terrible suffering, that I can make of it a thing of beauty by saying a yes, just as Mary brought forth into the world Jesus with her yes. God will not act unless we give him permission to be used. I was looking at the book of Job and trying to tell a child how interesting the Bible really was. So I told the child the story about Job. Job was a rich man, and Satan got into God's presence and taunted God about his servant Job. He said, my servant Job loves me. And the devil said, oh, he's got everything he wants. No wonder he loves you. So God said, I give you permission. You can take everything away, but don't touch his person. And so the devil went and killed all his cattle and his sons and his daughter and his servants. He was left without anything. And still God could look down and say, see, my Job loves me yet. He says, blessed be God. He has given it, now he takes it away. Blessed be his holy name. Then the devil said to God, yes, that's easy, but touch his person, then see if he loves you. And so God gave him permission to afflict his person. Job was afflicted with a terrible disease, and no one would come near him. He sat on a dunghill. And Job said, thank you, God. Blessed be your holy name. What you have given, you have a right to take back. And so God looked down and said, see, Job loves me. And God returned all his favors back to Job, and the devil went with his tail between his legs. And so it's something like that with me. When God touches my person, he lets things get worse and worse, and my heart asks, are you taking my health, God? Will I say, I love you or I love you not? You give me the gift of music, the gift of movement, the gift of writing, the gift of feeding myself without needing a bib like a baby. And when you take those, do you love me or do you love me not? All those petals are the ones that I would give to him with love. A couple times it took me more than a half hour to say, okay, God, you can have that petal, I love you. For example, I had 2 teeth pulled and I only expected to have 1. So I said to God, give me another chance because I expected only 1 petal to go. Now you've got 2. God has worked so far with me, and he has invested so much that I think my petals will come out even for him. I pray that I might always say to his question, do you love me? That my heart will always answer yes for whatever comes in my life. And the great desire of my life is to be able to say with Jesus, Father, the work you have given me to do is finished. And so I beg that when I die, I would also be able to say, Father, into your hands I commit myself. Into your love I give myself. I ask your prayers that I might always be faithful to a faithful God. My prayer for myself is to dip everything in love, for then it will go on forever. For love is the most powerful force that can ever be set in motion. May I share a few other things with you? God said a very few things. The word consider, ponder. He said of birds, ponder the birds of the air. And right now, little sparrows have just hatched, and you hear chattering of all these little baby sparrows and their families. It only dawned on me that the picture of loneliness that the Bible gives is so beautiful and so true that if you have to describe loneliness, use the words from the Bible. I sit alone as a single sparrow on a housetop. I can't think of anyone who looks more pathetic and lonely than a little sparrow by himself. I had a little bird in here, and he taught me something very special about faith and gave me a deep appreciation of my baptismal vows that I never had before. This little bird didn't know how to fly very well. He had never been let out of his cage. He was sitting on the porch of his little cage and slipped and lost his balance. First he hung by 2 little feet and squawked and couldn't get himself back up on the porch. Then he couldn't hang on any longer. He hung on with 1 little leg. He got so weak that he looked toward the floor, and the floor is inlaid. My heart said to that little bird, let go and use the wings God gave you, because if he wouldn't let go until he was so weak he'd fall down, he'd get smashed and killed. As soon as I said those words, the words of St. Ambrose came to my mind. By 2 wings is man lifted up to God, by the wings of faith and humility. And St. Augustine says, by 2 wings is man lifted up to God, by faith and by trust. As soon as I said, let go and use the wings God gave you, this little bird let go and swooped up and landed on top of the cage, and was patting himself on the back because he had let go and used the wings God gave him. And so I said to God, do you mean I should pray for faith? And he said to me, listen carefully, little one. What did I say and what did you say? You have the power already. The faith is there. It has been planted as a seed in your baptism. Now let go and use the wings God gave you. You have the faith. Let go. Put yourself in my hands, and then you will not just have human endurance, because this situation is beyond human endurance. And from this point on, I am trying to let go and put everything in God's hands. I ask your prayer. I love you. Sister John Vianney.